Hi, I'm your host, Brent. Welcome to the Climate Guru, where we discuss pressing environmental issues, including with leading experts. Join us for insightful conversations to inform and inspire action in your everyday life. This week opened in Nice, France, the United Nations Oceans Conference. It's a 5-day conference where 120 countries will participate to come up with a comprehensive agreement concerning the sea. Beyond our exclusive economic zone, in which countries have 200 miles out from their coastal areas, international waters in the world, 71% of the world is oceans, is unregulated. And there are many concerns about deep sea mining that can disrupt sea life and other factors. There's concern about overfishing. There's concern about sea level rise, protecting coastal zones, plastic pollution, destruction of biodiversity, overfishing. The seas face severe degradation because of human activities. 93% of the heat, excess heat caused by human activities, particularly climate change, is absorbed by the oceans. The oceans absorb 93% of the excess heat, which is an enormous amount of heat. If that didn't take place, the Earth would be 60 or 70 degrees warmer. Life on Earth would be impossible. The oceans absorb 25% of the excess carbon that we create through human activities, the carbon that creates the greenhouse effect. This is causing all kinds of problems in the ocean. It reduces the amount of oxygen that marine life needs. It also reduces the ability of shell-forming organisms, corals, mollusks, lobsters, crabs to form their shells. There's many issues that are affecting the seas they want to address in this conference. The conference was opened by Antonio Guterres of the United Nations, who said, we have to move from plunder to protection of the seas. We have to move from exclusion to equity, from short-term exploitation to long-term stewardship. Now, there have been agreements in the past. There was a moratorium on commercial whaling and to protect marine life, but there hasn't been enough, and there needs to be a comprehensive treaty that's enforceable. Co-sponsor is France and Costa Rica, and President Rodrigo Chavez Robles of Costa Rica said, the ocean is speaking to us with bleached coral reefs, with storms, with wounded mangroves. There is no time left for rhetoric. Now is the time to act. Robles called for a moratorium on deep-sea mining in international waters. For 40 years, there existed the law of the sea, which is adopted by most countries in the world, but it was not adopted by the United States. The law of the sea has been criticized for not having sufficient enforcement mechanism, for not dealing with deep-sea mining, for not protecting marine species, for not dealing with climate change, sea level rise, overfishing. So it's hoped that this new conference, the Oceans Conference, will adopt the High Seas Treaty, which was developed in 2023 to safeguard international waters. In order for the High Seas Treaty to become law, it has to be adopted by 60 countries. So far, there's 50 that have adopted it, and it's expected that in Nice in the next few days, the other 15 that are needed will adopt it. So that's very positive news. The real work began last week when thousands of marine scientists from around the world came to Nice to meet to formulate recommendations for policymakers. Notably absent was United States agencies, NASA, NOAA, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, who played a major role in the past in the research and developing policies to protect marine environment. For example, there are floats in the ocean around the world to monitor sea temperatures. Half of the funding was provided by the United States. There has to be a comprehensive legal framework to create marine protected areas and to enforce conservation on the high seas. It's been stated in the High Seas Treaty, as outlined, that the goal of 30-30 should be obtained, which is 30% of the Earth's land and water to be protected in areas and protected areas by the year 3030. Presently, there's about 15% of land areas protected and about 8% of marine areas protected. But in reality, it's estimated that only about 3 or 4% of the marine protected areas are actually enforced. For example, in laws in the Mediterranean that many of the Mediterranean countries agreed to, including Italy, Spain, France, they have agreed to prevent deep sea trawling, in which commercial ships trawl and drag nets over the floor of these coastal ocean areas. These marine protected areas exist on paper, but Italy doesn't enforce them. Spain doesn't enforce them. Other countries in the Mediterranean do not enforce them. So this new Oceans Conference, in which is expected to adopt the High Seas Treaty, will have enforcement mechanisms in which countries collectively can have a mechanism to enforce overfishing, pollution, plastic pollution. And don't forget that half of the oxygen that we breathe on the Earth isn't just from land plants. Half the oxygen on the Earth comes from phytoplankton, which are plants that exist in the upper layers, the sunlit layers of the ocean, that through photosynthesis, like land plants, they produce 50% of the oxygen on Earth that we and other animals rely upon. The High Seas Treaty is formally known as the Agreement on Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdictions, and it would be the first legally binding agreement on protection of marine biodiversity in international waters, which is half of the Earth and 2/3 of the oceans are international waters. There's never been a comprehensive framework to create marine protected areas or to enforce conservation on the high seas. There are important aspects to share scientific research, to create treaties and a legal process, to establish marine protected areas, and rules on deep sea mining, to address issues of climate change mitigation, carbon sequestration. Many areas of the oceans, particularly seagrass beds and coastal mangroves, are huge sinks for carbon. There has to be rules regarding overfishing and pollution and plastic pollution. There has to be a mechanism for marine genetic resources that are used in pharmaceuticals so that large corporations don't have exclusive control of those very important resources, particularly in medicine. Now, there are some marine protected areas that are established by national jurisdictions, by countries or groups of countries, but they're just not enough. 15% of the land is protected under protection areas set aside. And as we mentioned, 8% of the oceans have marine protected areas, but really only about 3% are effectively enforced. Some of the larger marine protected areas, first is French Polynesia, which is 5 million square kilometers. There's the Ross section of the Antarctic, which is put together by 24 countries in the Antarctic, 2 million square kilometers. There's the Northwest Hawaii Island, a marine protected area, 1.5 million square kilometers that protects. It was established by George Bush in 2006 to protect 22 marine species, including green turtles, monk seals, which are highly endangered, and others. There's the Pacific Remote Island Marine National Protected Monument by the USA, and that is 1.25 thousand square kilometers. There's Shallow Reef in the Central Pacific with 7 island atolls. It includes the Western Pacific and also protects 190 species of coral, which are threatened. Another big one is South Sandwich Islands by the UK, which is near Antarctica in the southern Atlantic Oceans. It's a huge area and protects very important whaling and nesting areas, especially for penguins. And then Australia has the Coral Sea Marine Protected Area, which is 1 million square kilometers, mainly to protect the Great Barrier Reefs. Large-scale marine protected areas are like the Grand Canyon or Yellowstone National Park. They limit or prohibit commercial fishing, oil and gas drilling, and that's one of the objectives of the Ocean Conference, the Joint Oceans Conference, to adopt the High Seas Treaty, which was formulated in 2003 so that nations of the world can protect and preserve 71% of the Earth's surface, which is the oceans. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to the Climate Guru podcast. Stay inspired, stay informed, and keep taking action for our planet's future. Until next time, and remember, together we can make a difference.